My name is Rick Liberto. I was born August 16th, 1961 in San Antonio, Texas. My great-grandfather, Sicilian, in the late 1800s, the economy was tanking in Sicily. People were already migrating over to the United States, so his parents sent him by himself at 16 years old to Texas. So he came in through New Orleans. He arrived in New Orleans, there were family members there, so he eventually started a small company called the Crescent City Market. Just a little A-frame with a bunch lined up. You'll see pictures behind me later, but and started doing importing stuff from Italy, and just a small little grocery store. After New Orleans, they moved to Beaumont, Texas in, I think, the early 1900s. And the company continued to grow. It turned into where the family lived upstairs, the grocery was downstairs. In 1909, prior to that, he had acquired malaria. The doctor said, you can't stay in this environment, you've got to move. So in 1909, he moved the family, which were my grandfather, I think there were 6 boys and 1 girl at the time, to San Antonio. They had bought a building at South Presa, just north of the train tracks, south of town. And he put the family upstairs and opened up the grocery downstairs. And at that time, he called it the Liberto Grocery Market. They were near the train tracks and the circus would come in. So my grandfather was like, I want to supply when these circuses come to town. So he started selling peanuts. And so he did all of this down here on South Presa. And I don't know what year it was, but then the family moved up to the Italian neighborhood, which was North Flores Street. They did very well. Company continued to grow. Now he's supplying more different products. So from South Presa, the family moved up to North Flores, worked there for a while, and then the company continued to grow, moved into the Produce Row, which is where Mi Tierra is and all that is today. But back then it was small warehouse after small warehouse. So they worked there for a lot of years and then eventually moved to the building next to the Spanish Governor's Palace. Dad was doing business there. Dad had stepped into the company in the early 60s. He said the reason why he had to take over the company was, I was born in 61 and my grandfather lost his sight because I was too cute. So Dad had to step in. He started managing the company. That's when we moved to Military Plaza and next to the Spanish Governor's Palace. And he got the contract to supply products for the World's Fair. And I don't know, very soon before it opened, 1968, we had a huge fire and he lost everything right before the opening of the Hemisphere. So Dad went into all of his friends in the business saying, look, I need product and you need to give it to me on credit and I guarantee I'll pay you back. He did, moved through that situation, but before doing it, he had to find a building. This building we're sitting in today was an old car warehouse and they worked on cars. So he bought it in 1968. The company moved here and he did business out of this. I grew up here riding forklifts and push carts all over the warehouse and driving in trucks with the drivers. We call him Frank, was an entrepreneur. He loved business. Anything he put his mind to, he'd get it done, accomplished. And he wanted to grow the company. So back in the 60s, we were a local company. We were doing business in South Texas, and then he grew it to where we were doing business with the surrounding states, New Orleans, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Texas, and started supplying theaters in our area. So we went into a purely theater-driven business and concessions. It was concessions, but theater business. In the late 60s, Dad talked to Lionel Sosa, who is well known here in San Antonio, and he was a kid, and asked him to design a logo that he wanted to put his own brand on products. And my grandfather's name was Enrico. So Dad said, let's call it Rico's Products. So Lionel Sosa designed that logo, and to this day he thinks he was underpaid. We were doing popcorn, everything that went along with popcorn. We sold oil, we sold the machines, we sold everything. We also did all the condiments. We were the distributor for candy and all the sodas. So we'd stack up, you know, big old cans of soda. I guess at the time it was Coke. Yes, the theater business was growing, so Dad then thought he wanted to make it a national chain. So he went on we bought a bunch of our competitors. So we bought our competitors on the West Coast and in the Northeast and kind of in the central part of the United States, and we started a company that had nationwide distribution for theater chains because they had gotten bought up, they were getting bought up by Wall Street, and they wanted a nationwide price. And so that was his answer to it, is to supply a single price nationwide. And he did it through a company called ANDI, A-N-D-I, which was Associated Network of Distributors Incorporated. And he got all these guys to sell national chains like United Artists or AMC, popcorn, anywhere across the country for the same price. And he did it through that network. And so during that phase, Dad gained a lot of notoriety. People knew him all over the country. In 1976, we had our company in Dallas, and the guy that was supplying Arlington Stadium was talking with Dad, and they had talked, someone was having nachos, and they said, I wonder if we could try a fast food nacho. And they didn't know exactly how to approach it. The nacho, they came up, they had to figure out a way to melt cheese and serve it to the masses in a concession environment. When everybody around the country heard that Dad was trying to start this up for a season through Arlington Stadium, they were all panicked. You're gonna cannibalize everything else. Someone will buy a nacho, and they're not gonna buy a hot dog. They won't buy popcorn. You know, it's a disaster, Frank. What are you doing? He goes, let's just try it. So they did. Popcorn was the #1 selling item historically in Arlington Stadium. It sold just under $100,000, $92,000 in sales. Everything else increased proportionately. Hot dogs, popcorn. Drink sales went through the roof of beer and sodas, and nachos sold over $500,000 in one season. So overnight, our company, which was a distributor of other people's products, and we private labeled items with our Rico's label, turned into a phenomenon. People wanted it. All of our biggest competitors became our customers. And it was essentially, when you say overnight, in business terms, overnight, you know, it's a year, but nachos were selling all over the country within a year. And so the product was being developed so it was easier to serve. The whole idea of doing the product was to make it as quick and easy to serve and have as high a profit. After 1976, 77, 78, we were pushing it forward. And every stadium wanted them, every theater wanted them, so it grew really fast. We sold a toolkit, so my dad was such a detail-oriented guy. He wanted everyone to be able to mix that cheese exactly the way it was supposed to be. Back then, it wasn't in a push-button dispenser, it was in a ladle, so it was a heated ladle. Today, it's much more efficient. There isn't cheese being given away in big stadiums and theaters. It's all portion controlled. We now sell in just over 57 countries today. And it's mainly our products. Back, I guess about 10 years ago, we sold the distribution end. So we got out of selling candies and anything that theaters and stadiums used. So all we sell today is our own manufactured products. So it's our cheese sauces, our chips, our popcorns, salsas, jalapenos. I've been in Asia and seen our products sitting in a convenience store or at a zoo, the zoo in Singapore. So, you know, I would be surprised traveling and seeing it places, but I understand that if someone's distributing it in Japan, they can sell that product to whoever they want. Well, we created an item that didn't exist prior to it, you know, a fast food nacho. Oh, the funny story, at Howard Cosell, I'm trying to remember what sports guys it was. I know for sure it was Howard Cosell. It was when nachos were first coming out. And it was a Monday Night Football. Howard Cosell was sitting there, and it might be Don Meredith. He's like, has anyone tried those Nachos? And they go, yeah, they're good. And he goes, the cheese is great. Those pickles are sure hot or something. I mean, it was just the funniest thing. You couldn't have paid anyone for better advertising. And I think it was just such a good item that people loved it. Dad had a film made with the Disney group to introduce nachos. And we have a character named Pepe, which is the pepper. Rico is the cheese guy. Nacho is the chip guy. And they're kind of cartoon characters. Nacho's kind of goofy. Rico's, you know, Pepe is like, see, you know, that type of thing. Well, when it hit Mexico and got into their theaters, the kids would come to watch that preview prior to a movie, and they became really famous, unbeknownst to us, and we didn't spend 1 cent to develop it. You know, we were very fortunate to have that product introduced in concession environments, and when the theater industry of the United States took off and went into foreign countries, they just grabbed us and took us along with them. I remember traveling with him during these first years of Nachos, how people fell in love with him, and he really never isolated anyone. You know, everything about my father was, whether you were a competitor or a distributor or you were going to deal with my products, everyone got treated the same. And a lot of those competitors became our customers. And so they loved him. And so I think what was so interesting is watching people fall in love with my father, because he was a great salesman. He was a great people person, great salesman, and an entrepreneur. I mean, if he saw that the industry needed something, he did it. The industry back in the old days, when it was theater owners, these were big families across the country. These guys didn't communicate with each other. They knew each other. But it was like, we've got this market, you've got that market, we don't talk. And it was, I forget what year it was, but it was when the popcorn scare happened, and everyone said, oh my God, a bucket of movie popcorn is like eating 15 hot dogs, and so everyone was panicking. This was a high volume item for theaters, and it was getting hatched at for healthiness, and the country was becoming more healthy. And the thing that made it unhealthy was how to pop popcorn. You have to pop it at high heat, and you have to hydrogenate oil to withstand the high heat. Hydrogenating it made it absolutely super fattening. So my father got every single theater owner in the United States to San Antonio, Texas, in this building before it was redeveloped, and had what he called Popcorn Gate, and got all the guys to talk about it. And at that point is when air popping became the big issue. And we have a big plant in Dallas, which is all we do is air popcorn. But he was a negotiator, and he could get things done. There was a time that Dad thought about moving us to Dallas, and it's when the company was growing, and we just didn't want to go move to Dallas. The family is here, our cousins are here, and he said that we don't have to have a corporate headquarters next to where big warehouses are, and so we kept it here in San Antonio, yeah. And the roots, I mean, my God, over 100 years doing business. And what's funny is if you look at where the locations of these companies were, each one through the generations from the great-grandfather, grandfather, father, me, and now my niece's generation, the company's pretty much operated anywhere from South Flores to South Presa, those two streets, for over 100 years. The values that were given to us by our great-grandfather, our grandfather, and my father. Treat everyone as you would want them to treat you. Your word is golden. Just a lot of, it's you're no better than anyone else. So as the company grows, we'll continue to hold on to that, our family values. I mean, we're a good, tight-knit family, and we've come through some hard times lately, and I think it's drawn us even closer. Work hard, think outside the box, especially in today's business. Something's coming to my mind that my grandfather said, never look a gift horse in the mouth. But, in business today, yeah, it takes time and effort and really looking at how everything's evolving business-wise. And we're in the food business. And that's, you always said, oh, that's a safe business. People are always going to eat, but it's evolving. So yeah, you've got to stay on top of your game.